Hey guys, Mr. Kopitsky here, and I want to talk a little bit about free trade and two concepts called comparative advantage and absolute advantage. These are kind of tricky, so I've got some practice problems on there. I've got a video for you guys to look at and some things for you to walk through. Rewind this, watch the AC/DC one, or there's a good AP Central one I've uploaded too, and try to get the hang of this. And we'll have a review, I think, Tuesday night I have it scheduled, so if there's anything that you don't understand, just ask me then. Okay, so let's chat. Why do nations trade? Well, there's some basic ideas behind trade that go all the way back to the mercantilist era. If you remember mercantilism, the goal of mercantilism was to establish colonies, get raw materials from the colonies, and accumulate gold, right? Led to a lot of unnecessary, stupid wars, England and France. And, there were other reasons too, but, basically, the idea at the time was that you did not trade with your rivals, you accumulated gold, and that you out-empired them. Adam Smith came along in The Wealth of Nations and said this is just a ridiculous way for us to live, that there's what he called an absolute advantage that different countries have by chance, by nature, by God, however you want to think about it, that certain places are blessed with certain natural resources and have certain advantages over others. And really, everyone's better off if the nation with a better resource producing good A produces it and doesn't try to do it himself or take colonies and fight for it, and then trade with nation B to get something else that nation A can't make as well. Here's an advantage, and he called that absolute advantage. Here's an example of that. And I've got it on the slide here. Absolute advantage simply means that country A can make more of something than country B, okay? It can outproduce them. Here I've got an example. England can make 10 sheep or 1 wine, okay, in a year's time, let's say. And, don't get hung up on how can England only make 10 sheep in a year. Think of it as 10 units of sheep, which could be 1 million sheep or something, okay? So England can make 10 sheep or 1 wine. England has an absolute advantage in sheep. They can outproduce France in sheep, okay? France has an absolute advantage in wine. France can make 10 wines versus 1 sheep, okay? So France has an absolute advantage in wine. Now, if you think about it, these two countries would be limited by their respective production possibilities curve. Think of a typical curve. England's intercepts would be 10 sheep and 1 wine. France would be 10 wine or 1 sheep. There's no way England could consume, 10 sheep and 2 wines, or some combination thereof. For every 1 wine England makes, they have to give up 10 sheep. For every sheep that France makes, they have to give up 10 wines. But what if England made all sheep, okay? And that's what we would do in absolute advantage. England would make all sheep. Now England has 10 sheep, okay? France would make all wine, 10 wines. Would England exchange a sheep for more than 1/10 of a wine? Yes, right? Because that's better than their domestic opportunity cost. Would France exchange wine for more than 1/10 of a sheep? Yeah. So let's say England makes 10 sheep. They keep, 5 for themselves, and they give 5 to France, okay? Wow. Now France has 5 sheep, and what else could they do? France could send 5 wines to England. So now France has 5 wine and 5 sheep. They would never have 5 sheep and 5 wine under their own domestic production, and England would never have 5 sheep and 5 wine on their own domestic production, okay? Look at the opportunity cost, right? There's no way that England would be able to do that. If they had 5 sheep, they'd only have, if they produced 5 sheep, okay, they would not be able to make more than 1/2 wine, okay? So absolute advantage. You can make more than the other country, okay? England makes more sheep, France makes more wine, 1 produce sheep, 1 produce wine, and they trade between their individual domestic opportunity cost, and everybody wins, okay? All right, let's take a look. Here, we've got the United States, okay? The United States can make 100 cars or 50 TVs. Japan can only make 10 cars and 10 TVs. Adam Smith said, well, these nations can't trade because the United States has the absolute advantage in everything. There's no absolute advantage that Japan has over the United States, so these two nations probably wouldn't engage in trade, at least in the cars and TV business. Can you think of a reason, though, that we could put this in a way that it might make sense for the United States and Japan to trade? Yes, there's something called comparative advantage. David Ricardo said, Smith, you got it pretty well, but we can take this up a notch. These two nations could trade. Here's how. The United States could look at its opportunity cost. One TV in the United States costs 2 cars to be produced. Japan, 1 TV equals 1 car. Japan has a lower opportunity cost for producing cars, okay? 1 car in Japan equals 1 TV, and vice versa. 1 TV equals 1 car. In the United States, 1 TV equals 2 cars that we give up. So the United States should not produce TVs because they give up too much in cars. The United States should produce cars. Japan should produce TVs. As long as the United States trades between its terms of trade, right? So domestically, for every TV we make, we give up 2 cars. If we send 1.5 cars to Japan for a TV, that's great, okay? And 1.5 units of cars, okay? Whatever that may be. Japan, as long as they get more than 1 car, because they can do that domestically, right? 1 TV equals 1 car. As long as they get more than 1 car from the United States, they're doing great. That's better than their opportunity cost. Both nations gain from trade. Right? Let's take a look at this. And you can see it on the PPC curve, okay? The PPC curve shifts out through free trade. This is another thing that can shift the curve up, trade between nations. Here, we can see the opportunity cost setup, okay? 1 ton of wheat in the United States equals 1 ton of coffee. We can produce 30 tons of wheat or 30 tons of coffee. Brazil can produce 10 tons of wheat or 2 tons of coffee. That's our, 10 tons, or I'm sorry, 10 or 20. They have a 1-to-2 ratio. We have a 1-to-1 opportunity cost ratio. So how would this work? Who should make what? Think about this for a minute. Just take a look at this. Who should produce wheat and who should produce coffee? I'm drinking coffee right now. I wonder if it was made in Brazil. I don't think so. Okay, so Brazil should produce coffee, okay? For every wheat they produce, they give up 2 tons of coffee. The opportunity cost for producing wheat in the States is only 1 ton of coffee. We have a lower opportunity cost for producing wheat. The U.S. produces wheat. Brazil produces coffee, okay? So let's think about this. What is Brazil going to have to get? For every ton of coffee they produce, they'd have to get more than a half ton of wheat, right? 1-to-2, so they're making coffee 2-to-1. So for every ton of coffee they produce, they'd have to get more than a half ton of wheat. The United States is making wheat, and we got to do better than our own opportunity cost, right? So we need to get more than 1 ton of coffee. Let's say the United States produces wheat and trades it for 1.5 tons of coffee per ton from Brazil. Everybody wins. Right? The United States gets more coffee per cost than we could domestically, and Brazil gets more wheat than they could do domestically by producing coffee, right? We do better than our domestic opportunity cost, and comparative advantage rocks. Okay? As long as our terms of trade are better than our better than our domestic opportunity cost, we win. We get improved options and added output, okay? And we can see those curves shift out. We can see exactly the potential, 1.5, right, of the trading possibilities line, how we can do better than our domestic output. And we're only going to produce wheat here in the States, so we're not getting more wheat. We're going to produce that wheat and have the potential for more coffee. Brazil's going to produce coffee and have that potential for more wheat, right? Those are the potential gains in your PPC curve from the trade. It's a good case for free trade. Okay, so what you want to do is kind of walk through how these problems are actually done. AC/DC has a couple sample problems. Watch those and then take a look at the practice FRQ, which will give you a solution video that you can watch the video and see them walk through how the rubric is set up on a comparative advantage case. And again, if we need some more help with this, if you're stuck after you do the videos and the practice quiz, Tuesday night, I'll walk through another problem and we can take any questions that we might have on comparative advantage. Thanks, guys.